Lomax Reese as part of the 2021 Word Empowerment Experience. The power, purpose, and possibility of Black women. Conversations about healing and wholeness. Exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook.
Good afternoon. You are listening to the 2021 Word Empowerment Experience. I'm Sarah Lomax Reese, and I'm the president and CEO of WURD, and so excited to kind of kick off the centerpiece of our empowerment experience. Obviously, we've been talking about women's empowerment and wellness all day long. But for the next 4 hours, this is kind of our centerpiece for empowerment. And I'm super excited to be in conversation with my friend, my sister, Dr. Robin Smith. And you may have heard Dr. Robin on with Nick yesterday, and they got the conversation started. And I told him, do not go too deep because, you know, I want to save some fresh stuff for our conversation today. But just a little intro, Dr. Robin is a #1 best-selling author. She's a sought-after national speaker. She's been all over the media. She's been on Oprah. She's been on The Real, MSNBC, all over the place. And she's also a writer and author. She's written several books, Hungry, The Truth About Being Full. She contributed to The Audacity of Faith. And her first book was Inspirational Vitamins, A Guide to Personal Empowerment. And she also, and I'm going to really ask you to dig into this 4-step prescription for truth: wake up, show up, grow up, rise up. So welcome, Dr. Robin Smith. How are you?
I'm doing well, my sister and friend and comrade. I'm really excited and honored to be with you. And you left off 2 credentials, one that I'm part of the WURD family. So that we can't leave that out. Absolutely there at the beginning. And certainly the credentialing of our tribe, our parents, our fathers and mothers. I mean, I heard your mother's haiku, which I had the privilege of being shepherded by her in some ways. Several years ago, we were talking about her practice, her spiritual practice, and she shared that with me. And I think it was actually January 1st, probably 3 or 4 years ago. So to hear her in this moment, really blessing and challenging us with that word, with the haiku, I just honor her as well, and I want to get a copy of that. So, but I'm really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise. So, you know, the reason we created this theme around the power, purpose, and possibility of Black women is, and really centering on kind of mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being, is because we are living in such trying times. And I felt like we needed additional tools, particularly as we're going into the holiday season, which for many of us is a time of you know, joy and laughter and family. But for many of us, it can be very difficult if you've lost loved ones, if you're separated from your loved ones, or you just have different, personal circumstances. It can be a time that exacerbates pain and suffering. Yeah. And so, you know, we're just in this stew of complexity and uncertainty, fear, you know, all kinds of stuff. And so I thought that it would be timely and valuable if we could be in conversation with Black women, specifically talking about how we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of everyone else that is in our lives better. And so I wanted to kind of start with Bell Hooks, who just made transition a couple of days ago. She was only 69. And she had a quote that I think can kick us off. She said, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. And so I think that that's so profound. But my question to you is, we are still living in isolation. Many of us, we're fearfully, potentially getting more isolated with these variants. And so with so much isolation, how do we heal as women, as individuals, but also as a community, when we know that that is so essential to the healing process, is being in community, when even when we can't be physically in community?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think about bell hooks, the other quote that is so powerful is by Audre Lorde, that says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It's an act of self-preservation, and it is an act of political warfare. And so I remind us that sometimes we think as women, and particularly as Black women, that self-care is some kind of new indulgence, that we're talking about, being pampered with nails and hair, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about the kind of self-care that you can't buy, that really is about restoring the soul, restoring your identity. And isolation, there's some research that came out earlier this year that social isolation is more harmful than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And people say, are you sure about that? And I'm sure about what the research says. And what is it telling us? That being separated from people in communion and community has a very serious impact on us. I think, Sarah, as you're asking, because of these variants that are coming up, and there are going to probably be more of them, how do we heal? And I would say not only how do we heal emotionally and relationally, financially, spiritually, but how do we heal our minds? How do we heal those inner tapes, what I call the conditioning, that has many of us trapped and shackled, no longer our hands and feet being shackled, but our brains. And so there is a type of brainwashing. We think of brainwashing as being negative, that a cult gets you and they brainwash you. Well, there's a different kind of brainwashing that I'm inviting us today to consider, which are what messages right here, right now, for every woman and every person, but every Black woman who is listening, what tape, what message are you attached to that isn't serving you well now? And I don't want to hear the excuses quite yet, because you don't understand, Dr. Robin, you don't know, my mother, father, brother, sister, somebody needs me. Right, but we're no good to any of those people on many levels if we are making an excuse about why self-neglect has become almost a badge of honor for Black women. Girl, I'm so tired. Girl, you don't know what's on my plate. Girl. And what I'm saying is, girl, if you're so tired, then we're going to have to figure out today how we begin to rest. As Audre Lorde said, why? Because it is an act of self-preservation.
So I want to jump in, because I think that invitation that you just gave is really powerful. And I've been thinking a lot about talk and words and sound. We are a talk radio station. Our call letters are WURD, WURD. And there's real power and energy in sound and in talk, but we also have so much negative self-talk. And I want you to talk a little bit about how we can reprogram this inner narrative, because sometimes we are so mean, and I've heard or read, we would not say to anyone the things that we say in our own minds. that can really be so damaging. And so I want to just play around with this idea of talk, sound, words, and how we use them for healing as opposed to harm.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. You know, the issue of word, your word and the words we use is, you know, the Bible, the Christian Bible says that the power of life and death is in the tongue. In the tongue, and it's in the word. And so there is something about how unconscious we have become, and the word you just used, how mean and bullying we are to ourselves. So the harshness and the meanness toward the self, and some of that, Sarah, has been not only endorsed, but rewarded, that if you are trying, you know, to eat better and you fall off the wagon, that if you shame and blame yourself, that somehow we've gotten this message that meanness is a form of being serious. Like, I take myself seriously because I cut myself off at the knees. It's being able to challenge that and recognize that that kind of meanness and harshness and wounding of spirit is something that was not the way we were born, nor was it the way we were treated by our own. It is the way we were treated as slaves. And so if we understand, and I challenge fraternities and sororities, I am in one, I'm a Delta, but I challenge all Greek organizations, Black organizations, who use meanness, who use hazing, who use physical or emotional brutality as a way to bring a sense of bonding and togetherness, because that kind of bonding happened as a result of slavery. And so if we look at our words and what we say to ourselves about ourselves, the question I would ask everyone here today is there any tenderness in your tone toward yourself? Is there any tenderness for the mistake you made or the longing you have that you've not been able to find a scratch for that itch? Is there any tenderness, or is there only toughness? You know, I'm known, and you know this, I'm a straight shooter. I am known to be both tender and tough. But if I were tough only, that does not breed an environment within me or with other people that allows healing and possibilities to be considered and to be looked into. And if I am only tender, and there is no robustness, often there is an impotence. So I talk about self-compassion and accountability. I need to have a boatload of self-compassion so that I can look at the parts of my humanity that need some work.
Yeah, excuse me. And I'm sitting here, I'm like in the shadows, and I'm just like, damn, I can't believe I'm like sitting in the shadows.
But I love that. But I love how you're, I mean, I feel like, you know me, I feel like you're in the shadows because we're coming out today.
Okay, thank you. I love that. Way to work with my like bad lighting.
I believe it. No, I believe the shadow, Sarah, honestly.
I'm a metaphor right now.
Well, you're a metaphor for all of us, that there is this glorious light on you. Rumi says that the wound is the place where light enters.
Yes,
and so I believe, honestly, that this glorious light on you, I was looking for my phone to send you a text before we went on to tell you how beautiful you looked in the shadow and the light. And I really believe that shadow and light in this moment is a manifestation of what we are all wanting to be only in the light and not own the shadow that is a part of our journey.
Wow. We are talking with Dr. Robin Smith. Thank you so much for like weaving that into something magical and beautiful and affirming. Dr. Robin Smith is a psychologist. She's an author. She's a motivational speaker. She's my friend. And this is the 2021 Empowerment Experience. And we're focusing on Black women and wellness and healing. And the next few hours, we're going to be diving in and navigating all around in this space. And Robin, I want to see if you could talk a little bit about, there were so many like nuggets that you hit on with Nick yesterday. And I'm trying to figure out which ones, because you have done two books. One is Lies at the Altar. The other was Hungry, the Truth of Being Full. So this question of lies and truth, and how we use lies as a way of coping, as a way of finding some type of respite from truth. Mm-hmm. So I want to see if you could talk a little bit about the biggest lies we're telling ourselves and how we can make peace with the truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The first thing I would say about lies is that lies in general we don't tell them because we are bad, and we don't tell them because we are pathological. We tell them because we are afraid of the truth. We're afraid that somehow the truth will require something from us that we don't feel equipped or worthy to execute. So equipped and worthy. I mean, I want women, Black women, thinking about, I am equipped and I am worthy. And equipped doesn't mean that I have all of the resources I need, but it means that I have access to them. So lies, one of the biggest lies that we are telling ourselves, particularly as women, is that we need someone else to see us so that we can see ourselves, that we need to matter to someone else. And let me tell you, I know that lie intimately. I've danced with that lie. I've laid with that lie. I mean, I've massaged that lie in my own life. So I want to save people, those who are maybe younger or somewhere else on the journey, to recognize that the person you have been pursuing as your deliverer has arrived, but it is not who you think. It is not your lover. It is not your spouse. It is not the parent who couldn't see you. All of those things are legitimate. It is not the white person who is, not seeing your Black glory and brilliance. It is you who is not seeing your Black brilliance and boldness and capacity.
But Robin, I mean, I totally hear you, but there are so many layers of why we, particularly as Black women, have been socialized and have bought into this narrative that we're either just not enough, or that there's something external to us that will make us whole. Because
we are too much, by the way. We are not enough, or we are too much.
Or too much, exactly.
Too much, yeah.
Exactly. But so there's this these competing interests, and it's, so you end up, like in this space of just dissatisfaction.
And whiplash.
And suffering. You talked about suffering yesterday.
Suffering. An addiction to suffering. And so, yes, we are bombarded by all of these messages that we are too much, we are not enough, we talk too much, we don't talk enough, we are, over or under. I mean, there are so many criticisms of us from outside, and then we have ingested wholly those criticisms and made them part of our very flesh and being. And so a part of where this starts to stop the violence, not the violence at, in West Philly. I mean, I care about that. Not the violence in North Philly, not the violence in Kensington, the violence right now inside of me. And so the question is, how do we begin to deconstruct that inner violence of the lie that says that somehow there is something wrong with me? Is there work that we have to do? Yes, but that's different than being damaged goods. And so when we look at our history, Sarah, and we were nursing other people's babies, we were raising, I mean, talking about in slavery, we may have stopped doing the literal baby to breast, but we have not stopped holding the world at our breasts when we have nothing to give ourselves, and then wonder why other people don't see us as worthy, because technically we have gone along, when we have choice, to say, you know, the first person I'm going to nurse is me. It's me. And so does that make me a selfish mother? Does it make me a selfish partner? Well, maybe. See, I think even this, we've tried to get rid of what does selfish mean. Is selfish means that I actually am going to choose me over you so that I will have something one day to really give you. Then yes, that's what I'm actually going to learn how to do.
You know what I call it, Robin? I call it self-centeredness.
Yes.
You're centering yourself.
Yes.
At the heart of your life. So it's and you know, selfish, self-centered have negative connotations in our society, especially for women. But yes, I think that is a reclamation of something that could be absolutely empowering, is that I am going to center myself to make sure that you know, I'm whole. And you're saying also center myself, which I love, but there has to be a self for me to center on. And so that's the other thing. So often ourselves have been crafted externally. So someone actually owns the self that I claim. They can be nice to me or not nice to me. And that self is owned by someone else. What you're talking about, and I'm talking about, is creating a self that was not made by someone else. It was not crafted by someone else. It cannot be bought or bartered or stolen. And so that kind of self-focus and self-centeredness is key. The other question you asked, which I think is, I mean, has to be addressed, is what does this mean for women who are still very other defined? You know, we talk about whether we are inwardly defined or outwardly defined. And did your mother define, meaning who you are right now? Did our mothers, it's one thing to say they shaped some of who I am. It is something else to lean on that old definition and say, I'm trapped and I can't get out. And so there is talking about loss and grief. It is grieving the fantasy. You know, I talked to Nick about that, the fantasy of what I thought my life was going to be, who I thought I was going, who I thought my people and my parents and my tribe was. And it's being able to let that fantasy die so that something new and real and rich and rewarding can come from the ground of your own earth. So I mean, I think that, you know, this all sounds really great, you know.
Yeah.
But how do you get there? You know, like, what are the practical, because one of the things I really want today to be about are like practical strategies. What are the practices? What are the interventions? What are the tools that we need to become familiar with in order to start, you know, tapping into and really owning and operating from a place of wholeness and power?
Yes.
So what say you?
Yeah, so you mentioned, or because I mentioned to Nick yesterday about addiction to suffering, being
Yes.
addicted to suffering. And he said, oh, addicted to suffering. So many of us as Black women, and that's why I said this, there is an addiction when you're talking about what are the real takeaways, where do we start? If you look at AA or NA, the beginning, step one, is to admit that I am an addict.
Mm-hmm.
And so step one today for us is for many of us who are either not in recovery, did not even know we were addicted to suffering. We talk about, and I'll get to that, about the wake up, show up, grow up, rise up. The wake up moment is that moment where the addict says, there is something about my suffering that I'm attached to. It's been my excuse. It's been the way that I could say I woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I can't. It's too late for me. And so step one is the ownership of every woman listening, that you would examine where in your life did you attach yourself, define yourself, limit yourself to your suffering.
So I think in the Black community, that's like on steroids. That's an overdrive. I think, because of our history, but I think that we are deeply, deeply defined, not just attached to, but deeply defined by our suffering.
Yes. So what would it mean, Sarah? That's why I said about grief and loss. The grieving of who am I without my suffering? Who am I as a Black woman free? I mean, who am I? And that question we must begin to really ask. As you were saying, we are on steroids. And if we bring in the Black church, which I am comfortable bringing in, I'm also ordained clergy, but I must really challenge the Black church in terms of how it has romanticized and glorified suffering. I know the scriptures about suffering. I know what suffering has. I know the redemptive quality to suffering, but redemptive quality, which means I don't abide in it always. It means that there's redemption in the suffering. If the cross were only the cross without any resurrection, there would not have been redemption and power in the suffering. And so I'm asking us as women to really take a look at where our suffering, and this is not to blame you or me, who are here with us today, but it is to say we've gotten too comfortable being defeated.
But I mean, and I'm going to go to, we got some comments from Facebook, so I want to make sure we include those. But I think that just playing like devil's advocate, I think when people hear suffering, I think there's a sense that, but there are things that are bad in my life. I have had a hard time. I have been, whatever challenges, and we've all had them. So I, how do you differentiate this notion of suffering and being addicted to suffering from kind of the actual legitimate hardships that all of us encounter that we have to navigate?
Perfect. Yes. And I am the first person, and I said this to Nick as well, I personally have had a lot of suffering. I was in 2 very serious car accidents. It turned my entire world, professionally, career-wise, financially, upside down. And I mean, in a way that it's taken me 10 years to recover. And I'm still recovering. I mean, still recovering what that means and reclaiming. And it also could have been, as the old folks said, my cooling board. It could have been the place where my limp, terrified life gave up. And so there are people, I'm working with them. I was coaching someone this morning, and there are people who have been sexually violated, who have been raped and traumatized, who have lost not just their dignity, but everything that went with it. And they've made a choice and a decision that that horrible act or acts was not going to be the complete chapter and the complete book of their life. And so what I'm asking all of us to consider is, can you take your suffering? And this is if someone said, what do you do? How do you help people? I help people take the worst of what life has brought and convert it into currency that becomes a platform to live the life that is yours to live. So it is not denying what happened, but it is rendering it powerless to take over the rest of the breaths that you have in your life. That is our divine birthright. It is if you've been hurt and somebody hurt your body, they raped you as a child, emotionally and sexually, part of taking back what happened is to not allow that tragedy and that tremendous suffering to become your entire identity. We saw our ancestors, Sarah, do this. They were beat, they were brutalized, they were humiliated, they were hung, they were lynched, and still their families decided that this will not be the entire definition of Emmett Till's life. Right. And so I'm just asking that we go back to what our ancestors and our parents and our grandparents understood and decide that gang killings on the streets of Philadelphia are not going to be the only thing that is known about me and my child.
We're talking with Dr. Robin Smith, and this is the 2021 WURD Empowerment Experience. And for the next few hours, we're going to be talking with Black women, looking at the power, purpose, and possibility of Black women with a focus on wellness and healing. And we do have a few comments from Facebook. Oh, and I'm Sarah Lomax Reese. I'm not Brother Shamari, as you know. If you tuned in to his show, which is usually now until 4, Sarah Lomax Reese, the president and CEO of WURD, and it's my privilege to be in this dialogue with Dr. Robin today. So here's a few Facebook comments, and I'm going to read them all together, and you can address them. This is from Lynn. She said, "Good afternoon, ladies. Listening while I do my Christmas chores and going to get my booster. So nice to see you, Dr. Robin. You're as lovely as you were on Oprah. Give us the secrets to this loveliness inside and out." So that's from Miss Lynn. And then we have W. Scott Orthy, who said, "Do impossible standards contribute to a lack of self-compassion?" I would say yes, but I'll let you answer that. Yeah. And then from Francis Conwell, "Heal through self-forgiveness and service." And this is a quote, "Faith and fear cannot reside within the same household. Thus, I focus on what I can control and encourage others to do the same." I was going to ask you about forgiveness, but I don't know if you want to address W. Scott Orthy, this question around, do impossible standards contribute to a lack of self-compassion?
I'd love to say something about that, and you already said yes, and I say yes as well. But I would ask that we understand where the impossible standards are coming from.
Sure.
So if the impossible standards, have you decided who you want to be? And if you have created things that you can't obtain, again, remember, this takes us back to the addiction for suffering. So if I set myself up to fail, if I make the standards impossible, then I will suffer. And suffering people then make other people suffer. And so I would, something very concrete that we can do right here, right now, is to ask yourself, what is the, top one or two standards for how you want to live your life? And secondly, when you don't meet that standard, how do you recover? Because that's why I said this meanness. How do you recover when you don't meet the mark? Recovery is as important as meeting the mark. It's not, because we're not going to always be who we hope to be, because we're human beings. And part of being human and being whole, I've said this when we've been together before, that we all have holes, HOLES, and we are longing to be whole, WHOLE, which is a holy, HOLY journey. Mm-hmm. So if we understand that we have holes and we are unapologetic about the fact that I'm human and I have holes, and yes, I long to be more whole, and I'm on this holy journey, that's very different than setting myself up to be perfect.
I think that question or that issue of vulnerability is because I think that a lot of times we as Black women, we don't ask for help. We feel like if, I don't even think it's a conscious decision. It's like an inherited thing. Like we're just going to power through, and to ask for help, to show vulnerability is really like a weakness or a HOLE, a hole.
We think we don't understand. It is a divine birthright. It is asking for help is your divine birthright. It's part of feeling entitled. It's part of being self-confident. So it's the exact opposite, that if I ask for help, then it means I'm weak. Actually, if I ask for help, it means that I feel entitled to not carry this load by myself. I could do it, but I don't want to do it. I've heard people say, they go to court for something, and I'm like, who did you go with? Oh, I went by myself. I didn't want to burden someone, or, I needed help with figuring this out, but I didn't want to burden someone. You recognize that when you ask for help, often it is a gift. It's not only a gift to you, but it's a gift to the other person to say, Sarah, I'm struggling with something. What do you think about it? What are you hearing about it? It's very different than, I don't need anybody. I can do it by myself.
Well, and it also, I found, it gives people permission to, to open up, to share, to be vulnerable too, and what I've also found is, like, when I tell people what's happening with me and I'm authentic and vulnerable, boy, do you learn a lot about them.
Yes.
It's just like,
yes. And so what we're talking about is it frees people.
Yeah, it does.
Paul Laurence Dunbar, I wear the mask that grins and lies. So what happens when and we're not talking about the physical masks that are very smart to wear right now, but right. When we wear that mask, you and I saw each other, I can't believe it's a year ago. And, we always, how you doing? How you doing? And we always say how we're really doing. And so it's a very different experience, than happy holidays, Sarah. Happy holiday. It's like, well, happy and then not so happy. I mean, and so, it's like pull a chair up. But there is something liberating. And so I believe the same way, if there is a sale on, I don't know, like vegetables, or a sale on, fabric, and someone says, oh, Sarah, I love that jacket. Where'd you get it? If we are free, not only do we tell the person where we got it, but we say, you know what? I got it full price. You can get it for sale. So there's something about sharing what feels vulnerable, and ultimately actually is a part of just owning, I'm human.
Yes,
I'm human.
So we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up, and I want to see if you could just leave us with, well, a word of empowerment, a word of inspiration. All of your words have been empowering, but if there's anything that you could drop into our hearts, our minds, our spirits during this difficult time, during the holidays, that would allow people something actionable, something they can do when they're feeling overwhelmed or in the dumps.
Absolutely. And because this is a holiday season, I want to remind people often that what you see in other people's lives is not what is true. So
And social media like really messes you up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so we are often comparing ourselves
Yes.
and our families and our holidays to other people, and those things are not real. So the first thing I just want to drop into our own, minds and hearts is don't chase a fantasy and make it into something that it's not. That's number one. Number two, this wake up, show up, grow up, rise up prescription for transitioning suffering into something that is robust and sustainable in your own life. We talked about the wake up moment, which is to see things and yourself for what they are. The show up is report in your own life for active duty. If you watch someone working out and then you wonder why they're toned and you're not, it's because I'm in the bed watching them, and I got to get myself out the bed and report for active duty if I want something to change. So if you want something to change, you've got to report in your own life. If you want a different relationship with your child, then you've got to report to them, not what they need to do. The grow up, that to do the heavy lifting yourself and ask for help. Not from the wrong person. We've got friends who aren't really friends. We've got family members who are maybe jealous and not wanting the best for us. So be selective as you do the work of growing up. And the rise up is the moment where you decide, and you talked about being self-centering, that you see your own life as worthy of something regardless of whether someone else deems you as important. I just want to say this, and I don't want to use this profanity, which I won't, but I had a friend recently tell me that her ex-husband said to her multiple times that he didn't give an F about her. And this happened over the Thanksgiving holiday. I won't get into even why they were in the same place. That's something else. But she realized, she said, I understand, Robin, what you've been saying to me. It's okay that he doesn't give an F about me. It's not okay that I've been behaving like I don't. And so the word I leave with us is that it isn't about what someone else thinks about you. It is about what you think, believe, and reinforce in your own heart, mind, and spirit about what is true about you. And that cannot be taken away.
Well, amen, ashe, a woman, all of the above. Thank you so much, Dr. Robin Smith, my dear sister. It's wonderful to be in community with you today. Hopefully I'll see you in real life or, somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. See you out at the ranch maybe. So lots of love to you. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Happy holidays.
Same to you.
And so we are going to transition. We're going to take a break and we're going to transition to our next panel that's really focusing on mind-body healing in a time of hurt. And we'll have a panel of mental health and physical health experts. I'm Sarah Lomax Reese, and I'm the president and CEO of WURD. This is the 2021 all virtual WURD empowerment experience, the power, purpose, and possibility of Black women, conversations on healing and wholeness. And in just a minute, you'll probably hear another one of our words of empowerment featuring the voices of Black women from around Philadelphia, uplifting and inspiring us throughout the day. So stay tuned with us until 5 p.m. And you can listen on WURD Radio at 96.1 FM, 900 AM. We're streaming live on wordradio.com and the WURD app. And you can also watch us on Facebook Live and YouTube. And our sponsors today are Pico, Comcast, Keystone First, Temple University, Einstein, Pennsylvania Lottery, Spectrum Health, Philadelphia Museum of Art, Independence Blue Cross Foundation, and Envision to Be Well. And this empowerment experience is also supported by the Racial Equity in Journalism Fund at Borealis Philanthropy. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We will be right back.